Hi friends, and welcome to today's video. I'm Jeanette with Vivo Vintage Designs. Today's video should be a lot of fun. I hope that you enjoy it and that you give it a try. Now let's get started. Hello my friends, and welcome to today's video. I'm going to start by telling you that I had to force myself to get into the spirit of this painting. I do like fall, but I hate what comes next, which is winter. Winters in New Jersey can be brutal for me. It's a lot of snow, it's very cold, I'm afraid I'm going to fall. So today, when I went for my walk this morning with Diesel, I was inspired. I saw some beautiful colors on the leaves and I said, all right, let me get to this. I've been avoiding it for so long. I even decorated my house this weekend for fall. That's how much I was trying to inspire myself for this painting. So we are painting fall leaves, if you haven't guessed it by now. And I'm going to try and keep this really simple. I picked up some leaves outside, but if you're not one for drawing, you can easily trace a leaf onto your watercolor paper like you saw me do with the first one. And if you can't find some leaves outside or they're all brown, you can Google outlines of fall leaves like you see I have on my phone in the left-hand corner there. You can easily find inspiration, and you can either draw them freehand or you can trace them onto your watercolor paper. Whatever works best for you. You don't have to be able to draw to create a painting like this. This can be as simple or as detailed as you like. But simply Googling fall leaves or outlines of fall leaves, you'll find so many images to inspire you. And drawing them is really pretty simple. So I am using my Mei Liang watercolor paints, and I chose this palette because the colors in this palette are so vibrant. I am also using 2 silver black velvet brushes. I think one is a size 6 and the other one is a size 16. And the paper that I'm using is Artistico 100% cotton watercolor paper. And I do believe there is something not right with this particular block that I'm using today, because I found that the water and the paint were not being absorbed by the paper. It was just sitting on top. And that's not something that I've experienced before with this paper. I think it's just this particular block, but I didn't let that stop me. I persevered and I just fixed what I could and did the best that I possibly could, considering that the paint was just sitting on top of the paper. So I wanted to make sure that I pre-mixed my colors so that I can add them while the paint on the paper was still wet. So I can use a charging technique or a wet and wet technique, and mixing my colors beforehand really helps with that. And you can see that I've chosen some fall colors: yellow, orange, red, a couple of different shades of green, and an orange brown, not an orange brown, a reddish brown, and then a darker shade of brown. And for this first leaf, I'm using the wet and wet technique. And you can see my water is not clean, but I didn't mind that so much because the colors that I'm going to be adding are very similar to the color of my dirty water. So here I'm using the smaller brush, and you can see that I'm adding some red. I've mixed a little red with the orange as well. And I'm just picking up different colors from my palette and adding them to the leaf. Now you can see that the paint and the water are just sitting on top of the paper. They're not absorbing. And I really like this paper. I've used it many times before, and I've never had this issue. But I'm using my brush to blot up some of that water, because the paint, if the paper is too wet, if the water and the paint are just sitting on top, when you charge a different color, it doesn't spread out, it just sits there. So you don't want this to be too wet. So just if you're having difficulties like I am, just use your brush to blot off some of that extra water. And you can see that I am dropping in all types of all different colors in here. And now I'm going to let that leaf sit for a while. so that it dries, and then I'm going to come back to it later. Now for the second leaf, I painted the entire leaf in yellow, and now I'm picking up a little bit of red or orange, and I'm just dropping it in while the paper is still wet. And I noticed that this leaf, and I'm not sure if this is a rhododendron or an azalea leaf. I want to say it's a rhododendron, but I'm not sure. I see that it has these brown spots, so I'm using the tip of my brush to add those little spots here and there while the paper is still wet. And in the areas that I want the color to be darker and more defined, I'm using a heavier concentration of paint by simply picking it up straight from the pan. I'm also going to be using a glass pen to add the veins into these leaves. And normally a glass pen works beautifully for this, but because the paper was not absorbing, I was having some difficulties. So you can see here that I'm just picking up the paint straight from the palette and using the glass pen to draw in the veins. Now, if you don't have a glass pen and you're not having problems with your paper like I was having, you can use the back of your brush. You can use a toothpick. I've even used a pen that didn't have any more ink to create these lines. And what happens is that when you run the pen across the paper, it creates a well, and the paint will fall into that well, and it appears darker. And I really love using this technique. And usually, when I'm not having problems with the paper, it works so nicely. So I drew a few leaves in here to just fill in the paper, and this is one of them, and so is the one on the top right. And this one, I switched over to my size 16 round brush. I'll also be using a flat round brush. I think they call it a cat's tongue. But using this brush made painting these leaves really easy. And you can see that as I pick up paint, I'm picking up the green and then I'm dipping the tip of the brush into a second color. So I get a nice variation of colors in these leaves. And I really like the way this one turned out. I thought the colors looked so natural. Now I started to get used to the paper not absorbing the paint and water. So I used less water, and that seemed to work a little bit better. But I think it's something to do with the sizing on this paper. So again, I'm using the glass pen, and you can see this one was not as wet. So it was working a little bit better. In fact, there were some areas where it was not wet enough. So I did have to go into the palette to pick up the paint to create the veins. The more I think about it, the more I believe it has something. The sizing on this paper is not even, because that first leaf is still wet, and then the last leaf that I painted was drying quickly. This happens sometimes. I've had some harsh watercolor paper where the sizing was not right, and I was having almost the same issue. So it happens now and then, but I'll still use the paper. I'm not going to get rid of it, and I bought it so long ago I can't even return it. Now for this leaf, I found that using this flat round tipped brush really made it easy to paint this leaf. And you can see that I'm just simply picking up different shades of different colors, and not even cleaning my brush, and filling in this leaf. And I love the way this one turned out, all the different colors. And now you can see on this side, this is still a little wet. So the veins are showing up, but not as well as I would have liked. So I did pick up some paint from the palette and add it to the areas where I had made those veins. And what's nice about using the glass pen is that if you roll it in the paint, it will fill in within the swirls at the tip, so you can use it for a little while before you have to reload. I also used this round brush. I thought there was a lot of empty space once I was finished painting the leaves. So I used that round brush to create some acorns, which made it really, really easy. And you'll see that in just a moment. Now, getting back to my fighting summer leaving me. My favorite seasons are summer, spring, and fall. If I could just skip over winter, I'd be one happy girl. Every time I take Diesel out, I have to go out and shovel an area in the grass for him to use because he's so small. And don't you know that despite all of my work and all of my trouble, he wants to go in the snow. And he's so tiny that half the time he disappears. He won't go where I shoveled out for him. He's such a little nudge. Actually, he's not feeling too good. I'm surprised he's not making a bunch of noise in the background. All right, now let's get back to the painting. Now, back to this first leaf. I waited for it to dry, and I also did use my blow dryer throughout this painting. And I wet down the entire leaf once again. And you can see that now I'm adding more color. And still the paint was puddling. It was not absorbing. I used the brush to move it around a little bit. And that seemed to help. Now you saw that I used that round brush to create these little acorn shapes, and now I'm just using the smaller round brush to create the caps, and then I'll use the glass pen to score the top cap of the acorn to create a few little lines. And it's hard to see them in the video, but they kind of showed up whitish because the brown was so dark, but I was fine with that. And I also used the glass pen to create the little stems. Well, we are almost at the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you give it a try. Check out our Facebook group, Vivo Vintage Design Tutorials, where you can post your versions of the paintings and techniques learned on this channel. And check out the description box for links to the products used. A little splatter and we're all finished. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.